So I just got done doing my weights and my dancing, bad dancing. I don't do good dancing. Let's just get that cleared up right now. Had to take some Tylenol, Excedrin tension headache because I'm having a really bad headache. So I apologize for the way I look, but I didn't even come to you guys last night. I was under the weather, and I don't know. I really hope that I can kick whatever's kicking me in the hind end, but something's getting me down. Anyway, good news. I finished reading Susan Mallery, Irresistible. And that means you get a book review tonight. You also get a song out of me tonight. So let's start with the Susan Mallery, Irresistible. This is book number 2 that I was missing, and I was so glad when I got this last week. I'm going to read to you what it's about on the back. And I don't think she's got any special... Yeah, she does have a Dear Reader note. We'll read that too. So let's start with what's on the back. It wasn't just her homemade brownies that made Walker find Elisa irresistible. When ex-Marine Walker Buchanan stops to help Elisa Towers change a tire, he tells himself it's just the neighborly thing to do. And when Elisa finds herself baking him a thank you pie, she's just returning the favor, right? Both of them have sworn off dating. Elisa's determined to protect her little girl, and that means ditching her taste for dangerous men, especially a former Marine with dark secrets. Walker knows that he's not cut out for hearth and home, and his own crazy family made sure of that. But when the sparks won't stop flying between them, now the two are struggling to keep their relationship quote-unquote just friends. But with every kiss, their rules fly out the window. And let's go to the inside, shall we? Like I said, this is book number 2 and the last book of the Susan Mallery series on this series. Dear Reader, for writers, every life experience is a fodder for our stories, and the more dramatic and unpleasant the experience is, the more likely it is to show up in a book. It's true, I create human beings for sole purposes of torturing them. I do give them a happily ever after, though. I'm not completely heartless. So there I was, pulled off in the side of a quiet road in rural Washington with a flat tire. I'm a, quote, call AAA, end quote, city girl. But the tall, scary pine trees casting menacing shadows over me had conspired to block my cell signal. I had no choice but to attempt to change the tire on my own. I consider myself a liberated woman, but as I struggled to loosen the lug nuts, a thought ran through my head. There are times when a woman needs a man, or at the very least, an unnatural level of upper body strength. That's the first line of a book, I thought. I raced to the glove box for the notepad and pen, started scribbling because, you know, a woman has to have her priorities. Yes, I had a flat tire to change, and yes, it would get dark soon, but I couldn't let a great first line get away. You may have guessed that I did escape that harrowing situation alive. I changed my own tire, I'm proud to say, but I sent someone handsome to help Elisa out of her predicament. I hope that you'll love Irresistible, a Buchanan family romance, one of the most popular series, and just for you, there's an expert of the next book, When We Met, at the back of these pages. For more upcoming titles, please join me on the mailing list at susanmallery.com. Happy reading, Susan. This book came out, well, copyrighted anyway, in 2006. And yes, I highlighted chapter 1. The great unwelcome truth is that there are many times when a woman needs a man, or at the very least, an unnatural level of upper body strength. Unfortunately for Lisa Towers, this was one of those times. I'm going to wet your whistle a little bit here to read, so I'm going to get you to the next paperclip on page 17. Who is he to help me? I don't know him from a rock. He's lived here, what, a month? We've never spoken, and now suddenly he's buying me tires? I don't like it. I think it's romantic. Elisa did her best not to roll her eyes. She loved the old woman, but geez, Mrs. Ford would think that grass growing was romantic. He took control. He made decisions without speaking to me. God knows what he's going to expect for it. Whatever he was expecting, he wasn't going to get it. Elisa told herself. Mrs. Ford shook her head. It's not like that, Elisa. Walker is a very nice man. An ex-Marine. He saw you were in need and helped out. That's what got Elisa most of all. The, quote, being in need, end quote, part. Just once she'd like a little extra put by a rainy day for a flat tire. I don't like owing him. Or anybody. You're very independent, but he's a man, dear, and men like to do things for women. Aww. Everybody say aw. That's the first cute paperclip in this book. Next cute paperclip. Page 58. He hadn't met anyone like her in a long time. Maybe ever. Determined and independent with a heart as hard as a marshmallow. She was sexy as hell, too, especially when she was earnestly explained why she was not interested in dating or having sex with him, but he wasn't going to act on it. He knew better than to get involved. Things would only end badly for her, and he didn't want that. Okay. It takes a long time to get to the next paperclip. Page 308. She was a woman who didn't trust men in her life, and he was a man who didn't trust himself. But her gut said to go with him. Despite everything, Walker was turning out to be the best kind of hero. Next paperclip. Page 312. Walker was a complex man, she thought as she sipped her wine and listened to her daughter laugh, but a good man. She didn't like that he'd run out on his girlfriend, but she also didn't like the several pieces of her own past. Everyone made mistakes. The measure of a person was what happened afterward. Later, when Zoe was in bed, Elisa returned to the living room and settled on the sofa. And I'll let you read that part, because I want some of these things for you to actually pick up the book and read, because it's really worth reading. Page 331. The power of loving a child. Her mother pushed the plate of her cookies towards her. All right. We've reconciled. Her mom and her were at odds. To find out why they were at odds, you got to read the book. They had a plan for Neil, the biological father, who took advantage of Elisa all the time, wanting money in order for the child not to know that he was her father. It was sad and sick and almost cost him their life. For that, you have to read the book. Now they're saying, the mom says, so what about Walker? Elisa bit into a cookie and chewed. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get through to him. Tell him the truth, her mother advised. Tell him that you love him. What? I can't say that. Why not? What's the worst that would happen? What was the worst? What would be the worst? I'll never see him again, and he'll run, and I'll be all alone. You've been alone before, so that's survivable, and if he runs, then he's not the man for you. Loving someone is a gift, and if the guy in question is too stupid to realize that, then you're better off without him. Wouldn't you want to know sooner rather than later? Elisa thought about the wonderful time she had with Walker, and the way he was so patient with Zoe. I prefer the latter. Her mother raised her eyebrows. Are you sure about that? Elisa sighed. Okay, not the mature answer, I know. You're right. Find out now, and then I can get started on getting over him. How's that? Better, her mother said. Besides, you don't want to... I'll get this right in a minute, I promise. Besides, don't you want him to know? Even if it doesn't work out, wouldn't it be better to tell him so that you don't spend the rest of your life wondering what if? You're using logic in a matter of the heart, and I'm not sure that's even legal. Trust him to do the right thing, her mother said. If you can't do that, then trust yourself to survive whatever happens. Page 346. The nurse patted Zoe's back. Honey, until the doctor releases you, you have to stay here. And the nurse cleared her throat. So the man only hit her a couple of times. She's okay. Thank God. Walker didn't know if he had said those words, only thought them. Either way, the relief was instant and powerful. He carried Zoe to the chair and settled her on his lap, where he kissed the top of her head and held her securely in her arms. Was that man really my daddy? Zoe asked quietly. Walker swore under his breath. Not on my watch, he thought desperately. He couldn't answer these kind of questions. Not now, not after what had just been through. He was the wrong person to help her deal with all this crap. But there wasn't anyone else, so he cleared his throat and prayed for divine guidance. It takes a man and a woman to make a baby, he said, but then wondered if he had dug the hole even bigger. But making a baby doesn't mean a man is a daddy. Being a daddy is different. It's a name a man has to earn. He has to prove himself by doing the right thing and being there and what else, he thought desperately. And loving his little girl, Zoe whispered as she began to cry. Right. He has to know her, and because he knows her, he loves her. Because she's a very special little girl. Zoe raised her head and stared into his soul. So you're my daddy? From the moment he found out Charlotte was dying, and had realized he was going to walk out on her, he carried around a weight in his chest. It was as if that action had somehow locked his heart in a small box, and that was both heavy and painful. Zoe's innocent, trusting, scary-as-hell words had just opened that box. For the first time in over a decade, it didn't hurt to breathe. Yes, Zoe, I'm your daddy. Isn't he? Walker is just like the be-all, end-all Romeo, if you will. But anyway, we're going to move on. You only get one more paper clip before rating, people. Some of you should be overjoyed. She wiped away her tears, folded the letter. You can stop looking, Walker. Walker was looking for Ben's Ashley. Ben was a guy that took a bullet for him. And he felt the need to go on this search to find the Ashley that he thought was missing Ben. But little did he know, Ashley was just a crush that Ben had. And it was heartbreaking for Ben to realize, or for Walker to realize this. Not because there isn't anyone, but because you're Ben's family. You always have been. The person you've been looking for is you. He stared at her for a long time, then he bent over her and gently gathered her against him as he shook with emotion. I miss him, he said, his voice gruff, every day. Then he's not really gone. He lives on in you, through you, and he lives in me and everyone else you tell him about. Walker had heard her words, knew she spoke the truth, all of it. He was Ben's family in a way he'd always known that, but he resisted it because he wanted Ben to have more. Someone not so flawed, not so broken. So I should have. She reached up and pressed her fingers to his mouth. No should haves, no blaming, no guilt. He was your friend and you loved him. You will mourn him. No one can ask for more. For the first time more than a decade, peace settled over him. He felt the loss of Ben just as he felt the loss of Charlotte. He made mistakes, but he loved them both, and he loved them. And loved him. We're not perfect, Elisa said. No one is. We have to learn to accept our faults and move on. She was so damn serious, he thought, as he bent down to kiss her. He liked that about her, that she was serious side in her laughter. How she made jewelry and loved her daughter and took care of Mrs. Ford and stayed strong. I love you, he said. She stared at him. What? I had a whole speech prepared. He smiled. About what? I can't remember. You love me? Totally, and Zoe. She said you were her daddy. I am by every definition but biology. He touched her cheek, although I should have talked with you first. She looked dazed. No, this is fine. You really love me? This isn't some painkiller talking? He kissed her, careful to be gentle against her bruises. I love you, Elisa. I have been locked up tight for so long. I barely remember what it's like to live, but I want to learn again. I want to be with you in every sense of the word, and I don't know if it's right for you or the paper clips on top of this thing. I got to get the paper clip off. I don't know if this is right for you or just scary. I don't know if anything except you're the most amazing person I've ever met, and that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. She blinked several times. You love me and you want to marry me? Absolutely. Okay. He looked at her. Okay. She grinned. Okay. So you love me too? She sighed. You're not too bad. Decent in bed and handy around the house. Sure, you'll do more. He growled. I was hoping for more. She leaned back against the pillows and closed her eyes. I knew you were special from the first moment. I figured out you were too surly to be a serial killer. This had to be the drugs talking, he thought. Excuse me? Serial killers? You know, everyone always says how nice they are. You're not especially nice, but you have a temper and you can be distant. But I've seen how you look at Zoe, and I know how you take on the world to protect her. That was true. And you. She sighed. And me. You make my heart beat faster just by walking into the room. You're sweet and tender and funny, and I want to die when I saw you kiss that witch. What? Oh, Naomi, Elisa, it wasn't like that. Did you or did you not see her naked? He swallowed. Did I mention that I love you? Uh-huh. which is why I'm letting it go. Do you want to marry me? He asked. She snuggled into the pillows, and he knew she was fading fast. Uh-huh. Maybe have a few more kids together? She held up 2 fingers. He guessed that was a yes, and he knew he would never know why he'd gotten so damn lucky. I'll let you get some sleep. Don't go, she said, opening her eyes, looking at him. Don't ever go, Walker. So he settled on the narrow mattress next to her and cuddled in close. I love you, she whispered. I have to go stay with my parents for a few days, but then we'll be together, okay? You won't go anywhere? Not without you. Not ever. That sounds nice. Let's always be in love, she said. Of course. And they were. What do you think this book's going to get? If you said a 20, you are correct. This is another one of those outstanding Susan Mallery books that I'm going to tell you you have to read to really appreciate. Walker stands up and he's the man that we all want every man to be. He sees, he feels the emotion and he acts on the emotion. Before Lisa could pick up the phone and tell him that she was being beat up, and so was little Zoe, and being held captive by that idiot, he felt it. He knew something was wrong, so he had to drive there to see her. And it was just amazing, because then he literally took on the whole world. He was like, that's it. She's not going to get to my Zoe ever again. And he just knew that no father should treat a daughter like a second-class citizen, let alone abuse her. And it was a beautiful book. So it gets a 20. I highly suggest you read it. Next up, a Valentine's Day song.